right. Welcome to everyone that's here. Let me know how the audio is, if you can hear me speak. If you can hear the guitar and everything okay. So we'll go for about an hour here. So for those of that are in here, go ahead and put your... yeah, hi, Chris. How's it going? Go ahead and put any questions you may have in the chat. What are some things that you guys might have questions about? Could be anything from practicing guitar in a year type of stuff, guitar tone, stuff about gigging, or any of that type of thing. So, hey, Raven and Mark. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been an interesting year. I've only been doing the YouTube thing for a year and not really. I guess I don't post as often, but I'm kind of waiting to get to this point so that I can devote a lot more time to it. So, well, thank you. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. From Brazil. Nice. Yeah, so one of my students earlier this morning, we were discussing chord inversions and drop twos and stuff. One of the things that I find is most helpful in my own playing. A lot of confusion from a lot of players about what the drop twos are, but you can just think of those things as chord inversions. And they go inside of all those scale shapes. So if I'm doing a G7, in every location of the neck, I have those same four tones. And so it really helps when you're visualizing the fretboard to have those chords under your fingers. Like every single one of these shapes is connected to the scale that's underneath it. So it's kind of like this layering effect in my mind. Kind of helps to visualize stuff. So, Mark, been playing for 40 years and have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah, it feels like that sometimes, I'm sure. So yeah, a lot of what that course is about is from my time. I've been teaching guitar lessons pretty much full time since 2004. So 21 years this year. And while I have taught children, most of my students, the vast majority of my students, have all been adults who've been playing for quite a long time. And so in those 20 years, I have, I found so many different types of students, but they all seem to have similar deficiencies in their playing. And it kind of goes back to what should we practice that first year? What should we be working on a consistent basis so that it becomes just part of us and part of our vocabulary and the guitar? So don't feel bad if you don't know what you're doing. It's an interesting journey to kind of humble yourself and then go through and learn things that maybe we forgot the first time around. So, yeah, it's a never-ending journey. I got a couple new guitar books that I'm working on over the summer that are kind of helping me out as well, just kind of seeing the guitar in a couple of different ways. So, all right. We got hello to Robbie, and then let's yeah, some of us adults are like teaching children. No kidding. The instant gratification thing. And one of those things that we have to keep in mind too is to kind of separate the different parts of our practicing so that we can enjoy the guitar. So like all of the different practicing regimens that I recommend, they usually fall down into one basic format, which is practice the structures and getting to know the guitar, and then have a section working on repertoire and songs using the stuff that you're learning in the structures section, and then leaving time for creativity at the end. So for example, what if I was talking about those drop twos, chord inversions? You can just use that. So basically what that is I know that a G7 chord is G, B, D, and F, okay? And so if I know where all my notes are in the neck, I can start to put these shapes together. Most of you probably know bar chord. And so I'm taking that little shape on the inside here, which is the fifth, the root, and the third of G7, and then I'm putting my pinky on the 6th fret to get it the flatted 7th. So now I've covered every note that's inside of G7. Okay? Now there's also a scale that goes in that location, G mixolydian, and it's going to touch on every single one of those notes. So I'm looking for that first one. There it is. There's that next one. Okay, there's the third. And that flatted 7th, which is F. And so, as I'm soloing over a blues or something, I can outline these chord tones. And so I'm just thinking of those tones. Even if you're used to kind of like that Albert King, I mean, that's inside another shape up here, right? And so what I did is, and it's a very slow process in my practicing. I hope you guys don't think that any of this comes like naturally, or whether, it's all hard work. And so once I found that chord, then I found the next occurrence of that. So the way that I usually teach this is that bottom note, which is D, which is the 5th, is now going to become the 7th of the scale. That root is now going to become the 3rd. And so I'm just kind of keeping track of these notes as they're going up, like that. The 3rd, which was played here, is not going to go up to the 5th. And then that 7th is going to go up to the root. And so figuring this out may have taken me 15 minutes the first time I did this. So 1s become 3s, 3s become 5s, 5s become 7s, and 7s become 1s. And so with that in mind, I'm able to move that up to that next shape. Now, there's a couple of things that you have to remember when you're learning any material musically, and that's the mind, the ear, and the hand. And so usually when a student is struggling with anything, or maybe they have a question on something, I ask them, which of those 3 are you really struggling with? Because a lot of times a student's like, I can't play it, so I don't know what it is, right? It's like, okay, so, well, you can't play it yet. But we all know that with enough effort, you can play a fingering, right? I mean, anyone can kind of do this with enough time, right? But it's the inside there. It's the fact that I realize that that's F and B and D and G. It's that I realize that that's the flatted 7th, the major 3rd. Here's my perfect 5th and my root. And now that I realize that, and I can hear it, and I know what that sounds like, I can start putting it to use. Now, while this chord may not resemble anything that you guys have seen before, you've all heard that type of stuff, especially the blues phrasing. So that chord is actually using that scale in that location. And so becoming familiar with that is going to allow us to visualize what's going on. We can kind of pre-hear what's going to be going on in that area of the neck. And then we don't have to go any further. I always talk about the gatekeeper method. So don't go any further if you don't internalize the material. And it's perfectly fine to spend, I don't know, a whole maybe day or two, in your practicing session, just going over that one thing. And then you can kind of add things as you go. And so that's how I internalize stuff. And I may have just sat there for a whole afternoon and went, back and forth until it made sense. And then as I'm playing it, I'm not turning my ear off or my mind off. I'm acknowledging the tones that are inside of that chord. I'm acknowledging what it's used for. And then after I'm comfortable with this in G, then I can move it to another place. So, all right. So, Robbie is asking, I'm repeating lessons and way behind. Are you keeping all the lessons available? Absolutely. Yep. So I'm not going to take any of the lessons down at all. So they're just going to remain up there. And if you have any questions on any particular lesson, you can reach out to me and we can kind of cover that too. For those of you that don't know, I also have a lesson studio. So I have a bunch of students that I teach over the course of the week. I'm available most every single day except for Sunday, so we keep that for family day. But if you want to reach out for lessons, even if it's just a one-off lesson that you want to get together, you can reach out to me about that, and then that might be able to clear some stuff up. So, all right, Paul. Hey, Paul. Says the Cat Stevens lesson has been great. It's showing my weakness in keeping time properly. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm taking that one really slow because, of course, it is a beginner level lesson, and also because I want um, those who are going through it to kind of understand how I would build a song from the ground up if I'm not familiar with the material. And this is one of the downsides to getting the tab of something. I was super guilty of this when I first started playing. If I wanted to learn something, I would just go out and buy the tab book, or, um, I guess that's all that was available in the 1990s. But I would get the tab book, and then, first of all, you're completely overwhelmed because the song's, 8, 10, 12 pages long. And you kind of feel like you have to, digest the whole thing in one go. But if you learn it by ear, and you kind of use this gatekeeper method that I've been talking about, and you kind of internalize everything as you go, it's not as overwhelming. And a lot of songs are a lot simpler than the transcription would let on. So, for example, um, I was talking about "Free Fallin'" by Tom Petty with another student this week, and it's such a simple song. I mean, most any beginner can learn that song in a couple of minutes. It's 3 chord shapes. The strumming is fairly simple. The arrangement is straightforward. It's a simple song. But if you get like the Tom Petty tab portfolio and you like read through it, it seems like it's a lot longer than it is. And so you feel like you're learning each section like it's something brand new, but really it's not. It's just the same exact chord progression. There's variations on the strumming, and those variations are fine to keep. So you don't have to learn every variation that they play on the recording. You can kind of um, mess around with that on your own. That's another thing too, is a lot of students feel like they need to learn, like if they learn like I don't know, maybe it's like the verse to a song or something like that, and maybe the original artist plays it a little bit differently each time, or maybe it's just even in the tablature you're noticing like, oh, there's a string muted here and this time it's not. You don't have to learn that part. The artist themselves probably doesn't even remember doing that. And this is why whenever you are concerned that you're not playing something correctly, it's a good idea to find a live recording by the original artist of a song, because you're going to find a lot of stuff that you wouldn't have noticed. The fact that players don't even play stuff note for note. So famously, Comfortably Numb, which most of you probably have heard, Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb, that's David Gilmour on guitar. Most people think he played that note for note. So this is from 1979 on The Wall, but he didn't play it note for note until the Pulse tour in like the 90s. And so it kind of got to a point where he's like, okay, now I'm going to go back and like really learn it note for note and do it. But think about that. If you went on tour, on the Wall tour, he's not playing it note for note. He's kind of, I mean, there's elements, or what we call events, happening within the solo that are going to be similar from night to night. I'm, not disputing that. I'm just saying he is improvising maybe the connections to phrases. Maybe he's improvising the locations, or like how high or low he's playing something. Maybe the rhythm is a little bit different. You understand what I'm saying? It's not the exact same solo. And so, watching that stuff, you're like, oh, okay. So I don't necessarily have to play it exactly note for note like the album just to play the song correctly. And I was actually going to do a video on this, and I probably still will put it out on YouTube. But I have 3 criteria on a song. Let's just say it's a cover band set list, right? And I am going to learn a song or a solo. Do I play it note for note? Do I approximate it, or do I just allow myself to kind of improvise? So, what are my criteria for this? Well, there's 3 different types of solos, or let's just say generalized performances. Number 1, it's through composed. That means that the solo or the guitar solo, the guitar parts were composed in the studio to be an event that is in the song, and it is not meant to be changed. So my example for this would be like Hotel California. So like that solo was written in the studio, and it's played exactly the same way every single night without fail. And so that's the first type of thing. So as a musician covering a song like that live, I too would need to play that note for note. No one is going to let you get away with playing Hotel California and like just, off the cuff improvising the solo. I mean, we all know that, right? Number 2 is an iconic solo, something like the solo to Stairway to Heaven, where it was improvised in the studio. The artist will improvise it live. So I I challenge anyone to find a live recording of Jimmy Page playing the solo to Stairway to Heaven, note for note, exactly like the original. You won't find it because he never has. Famously, the original Stairway to Heaven solo is a composite of quite a few different takes that they spliced together in the studio. And so, but in that case, with such an iconic solo, I still don't have a choice. So even though he improvised it in the studio and he improvises it live, if I were to play Stairway to Heaven live, I would have to play it note for note. Okay. And that's you have to check out live recordings and stuff like that to make that determination. The third type of solo is where it's very obviously improvised in the studio, and you are free to do the same. And there's a lot of examples of this type of thing where you can kind of tell the general contour of the line in the solo. You can pretty much assume that the artist is playing an improvised solo live, and then you as well can do that live. And so whenever I'm learning songs for a set list, that's the criteria that I use. So I will, determine like this, like imagine like a country cover band, honky tonk set list. And there's a couple tracks from Nashville where it's very obvious that this is a first or second take solo. They kind of winged it in the studio, and then I'll do the same thing live. I'll keep the general attitude and the events, or maybe it starts with a big bend or something like that, and I'll keep that in there. But as the solo progresses, I'll kind of take it on my own. And me and the bass player that I used to play with in Texas, in the Billy Bob's Texas house band, we used to always have these fun little arguments because we would open for national acts every week. I mean, we opened for REO Speedwagon, we opened for Dwight Yoakam, we opened for let's see, who else did we open for? Martina McBride. We opened for Willie Nelson twice. And so when a band comes to town, we would kind of make this little, like bet with each other, like, okay, the guitar player on this song, maybe I improvised the solo in our set list and we play the exact same song. And the bassist was like giving me crap saying like, no, you need to learn that note for note. I'm like, I don't think he played that note for note, and I don't think he's going to do it live. And so here we would be like waiting on the side of the stage, like, all right, let's see if he does it. And sometimes they would wing the solo and I would be right. And other times they'd play it note for note and I'd be like, oh, I learned something today. Maybe the melody of that solo is more, important to the song than I had thought of. So, all right, let's take some more comments and questions here. Mark is currently in a yacht rock band and constantly getting new chords thrown at him. Yeah, I'm trying to incorporate learning these songs into lessons. Tough. Yeah, yeah. So you're right now experiencing what I'm talking about like kind of having all this stuff under your fingers. Imagine trying to learn a set list where every single song is a brand new adventure, and you have to go look up the chords for every single song. And then what I figured out was if I want to reduce the amount of time and anxiety, basically, that it takes to learn like a 40-song set list, if I already know all the different chords that are going to be in that song, then when I want to learn the song, it goes faster. I mean, that's the whole premise behind the Guitar in the Year anyway. It's you already have the vocabulary, you already have an encyclopedic knowledge of all these chords. And so when you want to learn a song, it's just there, right? I had this happen the other day. I don't know about the YouTube demonetizing stuff, but it was a particular famous song about being under a bridge. And he had already gone through the caged chords. And I'm like, all right, so this is just a C shape of D. And he already had the fingering down, and he was halfway through the opening arpeggiated melody within a couple of minutes. However, like when I first learned that song, I had no idea what the heck caged was. And even just forming that chord probably took me the first couple of days so I could hold it without getting, buzzes or cramps or something like that. And so it's a really good idea to have all of that into perspective. Like the reason we're learning all this stuff is so that later on we have an easier time. So, but good luck, Mark, in that. That sounds great. I encourage everyone to get into a playing situation, whether it's playing in a band, going to jam sessions, writing songs. Obviously, none of us are going to be famous or anything like that, but it's just, in my case, my playing live is about supporting my family, right? And it's just another income stream for being a musician. But I've always been somebody else's guitar player. I never had any illusions growing up that I was going to be like some famous guitar player. I've just always been the hired gun, and I am actually really, really comfortable with that. Hey, Marlon. Marlon has a question. As a beginner guitarist, what would you say was your biggest hurdle? My biggest hurdle was I had no idea of the scope of what it took to be a good guitar player. Um, it like my dad played a little bit of guitar. I started when I was about 10 and a half, and I didn't really take to it for a while. I think I maybe even quit right away or quit within a couple of months. But and a lot of people kind of laugh at this, but when I first started playing, the first two things my dad showed me were this E chord and this A chord. And I remember it took me like a month just to do this. It took me a really long time to do that. That's actually my dad's Les Paul up there. He actually passed away about 10 years ago, and um, yeah, I remember going to get that guitar in 1989, and it was so funny because I didn't want to go. I thought music was stupid, and uh, he said, "Come on with me to the music store. I'm picking up a gift." It was either his birthday or Father's Day or something like that, and he was finally going to get himself that Les Paul he always wanted. And I said, "Fine, but we're gonna go to the video game store, and I need a video game." I think I got, like, Castlevania or something like that, and so that whole trip was based around me, like, sitting there watching him play all these different Les Pauls and finally picking that one, and it's kinda nice that I still have that guitar. But yeah, so I just had no idea of the scope of this, and so I started reading a lot, and so I've always been a really, big reader, so, like, buying all these biographies of musicians. It kind of started with my dad had a book on Eric Clapton, like this color, full color, all these different pictures throughout the years of Eric Clapton. And I was really interested in the progression that he took because my dad had all these things on recording, right? And so he showed me like the Blues Breakers album. I'm like, okay, so this is Clapton before the beard playing a Les Paul. Okay. And he's like, well, there's one earlier. And then he showed me the Yardbirds. And I'm like, oh, huh. He sounds good, but he doesn't sound like Cream Crossroads Eric Clapton. I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, wait a minute. So it's what, 1964? And then by 1967, we have Wheels of Fire or 68, whatever it is, right? I'm like, what happened? What happened between this kind of plinky, good, but still very underdeveloped Eric Clapton and the Yardbirds to just a few years later, he's king of the world, with, people even writing Clapton as God on, pub walls and stuff like that. It's like, what happened? Well, a lot of development, right? And so that really intrigued me. I was like, okay. And so I started getting biographies of lots of different people, blues artists. I got a Muddy Waters biography. I got Howlin' Wolf's biography. I got Steve Ray Vaughan's biography. That's the first time I ever um, learned in a story about another musician about sleeping with your guitar. How did Steve Ray Vaughan get so good? Was he born with it? Not really. I mean, he practiced 10, 12, 14 hours a day and slept with his guitar. That's what happened. And so it started instilling in me this idea that it had nothing to do with like innate talent. It had everything to do with effort and time spent. Um, yeah, and then you hear stories about Van Halen, right? So he'd come home from school and he'd be practicing at the foot of his bed. His brother would go out, partying or whatever, come back at 3 a.m. and Eddie would still be there at the foot of his bed, never having even left, spent that entire time practicing his guitar. And so I don't understand, why I didn't think of this in the beginning. And I know so many players that they'll hear this for the first time, and it's a little bit disheartening in some ways, but it helps you keep perspective because, and you'll hear me say this all the time in lessons, all of this stuff is about managing expectations. If you don't have 10 hours a day and you think that you're going to be Steve Vai or something like that, then you're like, okay, I have concrete proof that that's probably not going to happen because this is how they got there, right? And so it helps us to be really comfortable with what we have to give. Now, like I've said before, in the first year, a half hour a day to an hour a day is perfect. You do not need to be spending 3 hours. You can, you totally can, but you do not need to be spending 3 to 5 hours a day in your first year. That's just unreasonable. You don't even have enough to practice to do that. That would just be a waste of time. But what could you do with that other time if you do have the time, for example, and you really are interested? It's learning all these kind of like supplemental parallel skills. So if you want to learn more about music and the guitar, some of the things that you're going to want to do are reading biographies, listening to music that is not in your comfort zone. One of my favorite guitar players, Roy Buchanan, I hadn't even heard of him till I was 24. Imagine that. My favorite guitar player for the most part, or at least one of the most influential on my life. and I had never even heard of him until I was 24 years old. It blows me away even thinking about it, because me at 16 or 18, I thought I knew it all. Of course, most of us thought we knew it all around that age. But it just blows me away that, like, another, almost 10 years later, I still hadn't heard of Danny Gatton. I still hadn't, like, really gotten into. I mean, my sister had the best of Larry Carlton, but I didn't know who he was. I didn't know his history, the studio session, all that other stuff. So, kind of like a long-winded answer, Marlon, but my biggest hurdle was gathering information and making, a realistic, observation of what it takes to be a guitar player. Um, and this isn't the only track. You don't have to become a professional to enjoy this. A lot of people play a couple times a week, and that's perfectly fine. But we just have to, like I said, manage expectations and make sure that we are not disappointing ourselves with the fact that, like, life happens. We have other obligations, and we need to make those things happen. So, okay, Chris Barnett, I have so many tab books. Yes, I get you there. So Chris, let me give you a really, really cool way of kind of digesting all of that content. So just get yourself a highlighter, and whatever tab book or artist that you might be interested in that moment, all you have to do is put on that album, and you're going to take that highlighter and you're going to read the transcription as you're listening to it. And every time you hear a phrase, a chord, a lick, or something like that, that really kind of, gets you going, you're like, oh, that's really exciting. Highlight that one lick. This is what I did with the first Robin Ford album that I ever listened to. And I would just go through and I was like, okay, so the tab book is 96 pages long. Okay. 12 songs, but I've highlighted 14 licks. I'm not just highlighting the most, I don't know, impressive sounding ones. I was making a judgment. I'm like, do I have what it takes to even play this? Like this huge diminished descending line? I'm not going to touch that. Not now. Right. And so I would just highlight licks that I'm like, you know what? I could probably get through that. And then I started a process called Lick of the Day. And so, for example, like one of those licks is from the Talk to Your Daughter album. So the first part of the solo, and he does this. So this kind of ties back to our drop 2 thing. So we have G7s. And so I'm thinking about that. You can kind of see where that lick is coming from inside of that G7 framework. Now, that lick was difficult to learn in the beginning, but watch what happens next. He goes to the 4 chord, C7, and then he plays this. Now we're talking. That's digestible. The first lick I played, it seems a little complex, right? But that one, I was like, okay, if I can't do that, then we have some issues, right? So I'm thinking of the C7 chord, and then what happens? I'm literally sliding into that major third that's in that chord. I'm sliding right into it. And then it's not just 9th fret, 8th fret, 11th fret, 9th fret, 10th fret, 8th fret. That's not what he's playing. He's playing major third, perfect 5th, flatted 7th, down to the 3rd, 13 or the 6th, down to 5. And that's the phrase. So that's what Robin is playing over that 4 chord, right as that chord hits in the song, which is measure 5. Okay. So then I said, well, how can I make this into something that I can use on a day-to-day basis? How can I pull that into other stuff? I mean, am I even playing a blues song that has a 4 chord C7, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, if I click them all, then I will have enough vocabulary to be able to use it whenever I need it. So using our cycle 4 thing, I'm going to go C7, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, F sharp, B, E, A, D, and G. So that was really helpful for me because then I had them all, right? You're only going to see that lick in 12 different occurrences because there's only 12 pitches of the chromatic scale. There's only 12 roots that could even be a thing. And so now I felt like I kind of had ownership of that phrase. And so what I would do with all those tab books is I would just kind of like one phrase a day. And then, maybe for 15 minutes or a half hour, I mean, depending on how much time you have, you're just internalizing this one phrase. And then you actually feel like you've accomplished something. What I found worked less well was learning a whole solo. And I kind of started noticing in a lot of interviews with players I enjoy, they'll say things like, "Yeah, I never really transcribed whole solos." And you're like, "What?" Because that's what we're told all the time. You got to learn all these solos note for note. And you hear people, like John Scofield. He's like, "Yeah, never transcribed solos note for note. Never really did it." And you're like, "Okay." Like Robin Ford says the same thing. He's like, "Nah, nah." He would just transcribe phrases. And that was interesting to me because what happens when we're trying to learn a whole solo is, if the technique is outside of our wheelhouse, you're going to get frustrated. You're not going to finish it. And I would say to you, like you mentioned, Chris, about those tab books, you know, calling yourself and, like me and you out and everyone else too. Like, how many of those books have you played all the way through? In a lot of cases, we could say, well, they're just for reference, really. But at the same time, we know that it's less effective to take on this enormous task that we know we're probably not going to finish. But that one lick a day, I mean, think about that. In a year, you have 365 phrases that are part of you or internalized, and you can use them in any key you want and on demand. So I think that that's a good way to look at it. So, all right, MC. Hey, MC. So how well should we by now know cycle four and notes on the neck? Okay, I'm still learning, but nowhere near memorizing them. Should I pause with the Guitar New Year videos until I catch up? Well, a lot of these skills are going to be things that are developed over time. So one of the things that I said in the triads video is that it'll probably be quite a few months before those are internalized. And I think I made a student feel much better yesterday in our lesson because he's like, there's no way I'm going to have this done by the proficiency exam. I was like, well, when the proficiency exam for this is going to be? I haven't told anyone, but it's going to be October. So those triads are going to be on the proficiency exam in October, just before we enter the last portion of the course. So if you don't have them all into your fingers right now, that's okay. And this is another thing about learning guitar that a lot of people really need to take to heart, and that is the best skills, the most important skills, like those drop twos I was mentioning at the beginning of this live stream, take a long time to develop. And what a lot of adult learners want to do is they want to check things off. Okay, give me an assignment that I can complete by next week. Well, then you'll never learn the triads because no one can learn them in a week. No one can learn all your scales in a week or all your drop twos. So we have to chunk the information and we kind of have to slow down and just kind of keep on moving ahead. But your only goal today with your practice is to be further along than you were yesterday. It's all about momentum. It has nothing to do about checking things off a list. Because guess what? I learned my triads in 1995. It's 2025, and I still practice them every single day. So it's kind of like being an athlete. Just because you get into the NFL or something like that doesn't mean you get to stop running drills or going to the weight room. You're probably gonna have to do it more. And I've noticed, like, like a lot of guys when I left music school the first time. So I'm like, oh, got my piece of paper, graduated with my bachelor's degree in guitar performance, and I didn't sight read a thing for 6 to 9 months. I was just so sick of having to sight read everything, and it was just such a big part of going to school and everything. And it was kind of like this. Um, you know, it was a sign of how seriously you were taking school or something like that. You could play really well, but if you couldn't sight read, you were considered a goofball. And so I was just kind of sick of the whole thing, and so I didn't practice reading for probably 6 to 9 months, and then I picked it back up, and I was like, oh no, because you will lose those skills, or they get really rusty. And that's exactly what happened to me. And so I had to start adding it back into my thing. I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to do that every single day. And so I've maintained, 10 to 15 minutes at the very least of that one activity. So with your question of how good should you know the cycle for? Well, a lot of times I use this idea of shoot for the stars, land on the moon. So like when I say, you should be able to say that C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, F sharp, B, A, D, G. I say it so fast so that you can see what mastery looks like. But even if you get half that speed or a quarter of that speed, you're great. Now, if I were to show you cycle 4 and say, okay, so here's how you're going to do it: C, F. Like, you're not going to have any idea of what mastery looks like. It's just going to be like, oh, okay. So when we're playing it for note recognition on the strings, by this time, if you've been playing for, we're into the 6th month here, so okay. So there's one thing that I would usually say to people who practice it like that. You're almost there, but you need to have all three things going: the mind, the ear, and the hand. So instead of just randomly doing that, you have to say C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, F sharp, B, E, A, D, G. So I have to say it as I'm going. And that's really the only way to kind of internalize the whole thing as you're practicing. So, and remember, the goal is this with practice. If I could do it this fast today, my goal by tomorrow is to be able to do it this fast. So you just keep on, reducing what I call the latency of your reaction time to these things. And then after a while, it'll be good. This is what metronome work is so amazing. A lot of students that I've talked to, even at this point in the course, I'm like, so you're doing cycle 4 with a metronome, right? And they're like, nope. Like, okay. So the reason for the metronome is not so that we can be like good little music students and everything like that. It's so that we can monitor our progress. If I'm doing cycle 4, 1 note per click, and I'm doing it at 60 beats per minute, and then by tomorrow I can do it at 61, that's an improvement. And that's why I jot that down in my practicing journal, so that I have proof of my progress. And this is going to help, again, to manage expectations. It's also going to help to give yourself a little pat on the back. I love it when a student sends me their practicing journal and they're like, you know what? I started with cycle 4 in the low E string at 60 beats per minute. It's been a couple of months and now I'm at 95. Great. That's awesome. That's exactly what you want. But if you're not writing down those numbers every day, then there's no way to monitor your progress. And then you're just kind of lost. You're like, am I better? I don't know. You don't really have any sort of tangible data to show that. So okay, let's see here. So that was the first question there. How well should we know cycle 4 on the second, 5th, and 6th strings, notes on the neck? Yeah. So the way that I really think is a good idea is to learn them on the bottom 2 strings. Okay, and then start using that W pattern to get the other strings, and that's going to kind of help you to figure that out. Now, with a lot of students, like they'll be like, "Hey, at this point I still haven't done the B string." I'm like, "Okay." And then I'll sit down with them and be like, well, the B string's kind of easy, right? Because the first note of the first fret is C. So that gives us a starting point of C, right? And then we just chunk the information. C, then F, C, F, C, F, C, F. Don't play it till you get it right. Play it till you can't get it wrong. C, F, C, F, C, F, C, F, C, F, C, F. Now I can add a note. C, F, B flat. And then I just practice that until I can't get it wrong. And then I add an E flat. And then you can start giving yourselves these little, little rewards, I guess. At least for me, it feels like that. So that's 4 notes out of 12. So I'm 1/3 of the way done. And so I tell myself that. I'm like, hey, you're doing great. You're 1/3 of the way done. And almost every time that a student's like, you know what, it's been months, I still don't have the B string memorized in cycle 4. All it takes is 5 or 10 minutes in a lesson. And then they have it memorized because they're practicing it with me. And I'm like, okay, so how is that different than you practicing it at home? And usually they're like, that's a lot different. Okay. And so, and I was actually talking to my daughter about this yesterday about learning songs and going slowly. And it just occurred to her, she's like, so you just like learn the first 4 notes of the song and play that over and over until you memorize it, then grab the 5th note and play the first 5 notes over and over again until you memorize it. She's like, that would take forever. I'm like, well, no. I'm like, if you were to get the script to a play, are you going to read through the whole your part? You're going to read through the whole script and then see if you remember it. If you remember it, no. You're going to read that first line. You're going to cover up the paper, recite the line. Kind of in your mind. Think about the scene and everything like that, and then check to see if you're correct. Kind of learn it that way. And so that's the same thing we do with music. We just have to do it one thing at a time. So MC, what I would say is just kind of challenge yourself to maybe pick one string a day and just for a couple of minutes, put that timer on and just really work on it and chunk the information. I really hate to see this when students are like, okay, C, F, B flat, right? And they go through all 12 notes like that. I'm like, whoa, you can't do that. You got to do like 2 notes at a time, then 3 notes at a time, then 4 notes at a time. And trust me, it does go faster. And then you will internalize it. So, um, okay. So next we got, sometimes cover bands play the song closer to the original recordings. Yeah, in a lot of cases, that's true, um, because they learn it differently than the original writers do too. Um, imagine that like you're in the studio, and you're improvising a solo that then becomes an iconic solo. To you, that moment in time was based off of how you were feeling, how much sleep you got the night before, how caffeinated you are, the vibe in the studio, the energy from the band, what you're thinking about, how fresh the song is. There's a reason so many players say that like if I don't get it in the first 2 or 3 takes, I'm done. There's no reason to kind of pound out 50 takes of a solo just to kind of get one good one. And so that's different than a cover musician coming to a song and it's this already iconic solo, and so you already have this awe and reverence for this piece of music, and you're learning it like it's this etude or through a composed section. So it's a completely different vibe. And so while they may have the technical aspects or the note for note aspect down, you can always tell that they lose a little something. I mean, I would much rather watch my favorite guitar player butcher his own solo than watch a cover band musician, play it perfectly note for note. Um, might be just weird that way. Okay. Paul B. Nice to meet you, Paul. Let's see here. Big Neil Young fan. I don't think he ever plays a song the same way twice. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yes, and Stairway solo played on a Telecaster, not a Les Paul. That's absolutely correct. Uh, Yes. Smash the like button. Thank you. If you could only have one guitar amp non-modified, which would it be? That's pretty easy. For me, it's the Tweed Deluxe. So down here, I have a hand-wired Carl's Custom Tweed Deluxe that I use on most of my gigs and most of my sessions. And he does a really good job with those amps. Some of you may remember I had a Victoria Tweed Deluxe, the 21112, like earlier this year, and that thing was a sick puppy. I mean, had a farty tone to it. It buzzed, it rattled, it just didn't sound good at all, and it was really kind of disappointing. So I sent that one back, and I was looking for just a really good Tweed Deluxe, and I did a lot of research. And I came across Carl's, and he's from New Mexico. I grew up in Albuquerque, so it just made sense to me. The thing doesn't rattle. There's no rattle. There's no cabinet buzz. Comes with a really nice Weber speaker in there. New old stock tubes, um, and it's super quiet for a Tweed amp. It just feels substantial under the fingers, and it's a really magical playing experience. So if I could only have one amp unmodified, it would probably be this one or a really nice Tweed Deluxe. I used to gig for many, many, many years, deluxe reverb. So I had a pair of deluxe reverbs. I had one late '60s silver face, an original, and then I had a like a early 2000s deluxe reverb reissue, one of the reissue amps. So depending on the health of either of those amplifiers, and I actually put in a attenuator into the reissue, I would just use the deluxe reverbs for everything. It was pretty much my only gigging amps. But one of the things that I found with the deluxe reverb was when you're using overdrives with it, you need kind of a mid-heavy overdrive, like a tube screamer. That's why tube screamers work so well with blackface amps, because they're very mid-scooped. And I learned over time that I didn't want as drastic of a tone change between my clean and my dirty, because I kind of live on the edge of breakup, not completely clean, but not super saturated, kind of in that 20 to 60% gain type of situation. And I found that with Tweed amps, I could blur the line. So I look at my gain staging kind of like grayscale. So I'm going from mildly clean, just a little bit of crunch added, maybe. I mean, what does this sound like? I'll take that slap back off. you know, I mean, that's probably cleaner too. I'm playing through the Quilter today, which is also another wonderful amplifier. Um, and pushing with the overdrive pedal just a little bit to get into the gain territory. But I don't want the mid-range frequencies to kind of, change everything. That's why I like using like my favorite overdrive pedal. I have a couple of them, but one of them for the country bands is the Protein by Brown Amplification. So that has a Nobles ODR1 on the right side, but they kind of fix it by taking away some of the Nobles is notorious for too much bass. So this particular pedal, they soften that up a little bit. But it's very neutral in the mids, which is nice. And so I'll click it on for you right now. So here's my normal tone, and here's that. And then the other side of this pedal is a blues breaker, but it's not as mid heavy as the King of Tone is. So that's one thing people don't realize with the King of Tone is that it adds quite a bit of mids. Also sounds great with the deluxe reverb, but of course, if I'm using a Tweed Deluxe or something, it's a little too honky sometimes. But yeah, so that's the thing with the amps. I've been through probably no exaggeration, probably over 60, 70 amps in my life. I've had everything from Dr. Z's. One of my first videos on YouTube in like 2011 was a demo of a Dr. Z Carmen Gia. And love that amp, just the volume and a tone control. I've had a ton of champs, deluxe reverbs, tons of Tweed stuff. I've had a Fuchs Overdrive Supreme. I've had a bunch of Mesa Boogie stuff, Marshalls. And I just find that for my needs, the Tweed Deluxe is kind of where I like it. And it's not too loud for a live gig. So, yeah. Robbie Smith, is this live recorded? Are we going to be able to watch again? Great stuff. Thank you. Yes, it is live recorded. So I'll just have this available on my YouTube channel so you can come back and watch at any time you like. So, all right, Gary, logging your practice and metronome speeds makes a big difference and lets you see definite progress. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I have practicing journals going all the way back into the 1990s. So it's kind of fun to be able to like go back and say like, what was I doing on, I don't know, August 14th, 1997? Like, oh, I was working on this song. Oh, I was practicing these scales. Oh, my metronome settings on these picking exercises were blah blah blah. That's kind of a fun thing to kind of have those old journals to kind of go back and look at. And you can also notice a lot of stuff about yourself too, like periods of playing in my life where I felt like I was particularly strong or weak in a certain area. It doesn't take a lot to figure out why. I mean, you don't have to be Nancy Drew to figure out like, oh, you were really sloppy around that time. Oh, you didn't do picking exercises for 4 months. I wonder what happened. Steven, big congrats on 10K. Hey, thanks. Thank you very much. Michael says, course is great. Loving every lesson. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, Kim is here. Yes, don't play it until you get it right. Play it until you can't get it wrong. Yes, I didn't come up with that, by the way. So it's a little nugget of information that I got from one of my teachers back in the day. So, Mark says, I once recorded an album with an artist. They had me record the solos over and over until they comped things together. I had to go back and learn my solos to play the gigs. I know that's frustrating. That's happened to me before too. I just did a studio recording for a young gal here in Stillwater, where they asked me to send them like 3 different solos. And so I recorded the solo 3 different times and sent them all of those tracks. And it's going to be kind of interesting to see what we get back. I might actually post the raw MP3 for you guys to listen to. That's before it gets mixed and mastered, so you guys can kind of get a feel for that. I want to do that a lot more because I've done a bunch of studio stuff recently, and I think it'd be kind of interesting for you guys to kind of see what that process is as we're going through it. So, oh yes, I watched Corey and Company smoke Midland playing one of their songs while Midland was on the stage breaking down. Yes, I know which Michael this is now. Yes. So this was one of the first gigs after things opened up in COVID, and Midland had that song "Drinking Problem," which, well, I guess I can't play it because we'll get yelled at. But anyway, so yeah, they had us open for them. This was for somebody's big birthday party. So one of our clients, hired Midland to play at their birthday party, and we were the opening band. And they imbibed on some substances before they got on stage, and they were, it's either that or they just didn't practice during COVID. I don't know, but they were pretty sloppy live. And at that time, that was like their hit song was "Drinking Problem." They didn't play it very well, and so as Midland was breaking down their gear, they had us come back up. The birthday guy had our band come back up and play that song. I don't know, Michael, if you remember, it was like 5 or 6 different times. And so he just kept going like this and having us play the song over and over again. And we had that one down pretty good. And so we just kept playing their number one hit or whatever it was, like 5 times in a row while they were just packing up their gear. I felt pretty embarrassed, but that's okay. Mark just got his first Soldano, loving it. Oh, dude. They have that SLO, that solid state head version of their overdrive amp, and I've wanted to try that out as well. Soldanos, yeah. Eric Clapton used Soldanos on his Journeyman tour, I believe, and he had some pretty cool tone around that time. All right. Couldn't keep myself from buying pedals, including a Tone King Tri-Tube preamp and starting a pedal board, even though I am a beginner. But it's a fun part of the journey. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Absolutely. So these are things that can actually help you to keep the fire alive in your playing. And I remember doing this too. So let's just say that you're like maybe stuck on a song or something like that. You're a little bit frustrated with your playing, or maybe you just don't, you're not quite there yet, or just not in the right headspace. Learn to shift your focus to other things that are music adjacent. This could be learning more about your tone. This could be about, like we were talking about, reading biographies of your favorite artists, going to a concert. You can still get better at music without the guitar in your hands. And I don't know why some people are like, no, you have to be this good to have a pedal board. No, you don't have to be a certain level to get a nice guitar. I also hear that, which is ridiculous. If you've only been playing for a month and you want to treat yourself to a private reserve Paul Reed Smith, do it. The only thing it's going to do is probably sit there on a stand beckoning you to come and play it. I mean, the only reason to have an instrument that's is so that it inspires you to play. If it doesn't inspire you to play, then then there's no reason to have it. So buy the best gear that you can afford and don't worry about whether you deserve it or not. Let's see here. Hello, Corey from Minnesota. I'm going to be going up to Minnesota in a couple of weeks. Loving your 52-week program. I'm week 3 so far. Are you happy with the reception to the program? Yes, I am. The only thing I find to be challenging is just when students they're taking the program, but maybe they didn't get access to the stuff on Patreon. So, and that's kind of by design, but and I understand, not wanting to sign up for Patreon, and that's all up to you. But just like, it's like all the files and everything are over there. So sometimes people will ask questions that are clearly defined in the book or over on Patreon. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been really good. It's really helped me to stay on a very consistent schedule for uploading things, which I've never done before. There've been a couple really freaky weeks where it's like, I either had to get up at 4 a.m. because, my system crashed or something like that. And it just would not load the video. And every time I loaded the video and it popped up on my desktop, it would be like frozen or the file would be corrupted. So I have to re-upload it again. You're getting close to the time when you want to post it and like the file's not ready yet. So, I mean, normal struggles that any creator has. It's been a good learning experience because, like I've said before, I mean, like I've only been doing YouTube a year, so like I don't really know what I'm doing, other than just, I mean, the teaching side of it is where my strengths are, but I'm still learning about, just the software, and I'm still learning about like managing stuff and all that, all that normal type of thing. So, but it's fun, and it's kind of fun too to not put too much pressure on myself. That like I'm not able to keep up with it, so. Let's see here. Where was I at? Okay. John says, I have a hard time developing a practice schedule that covers everything I should be working on and just get overwhelmed. Any advice on developing a practice session that is productive? Yeah, so you just start off with how much time you have, and then you're just going to split that up. So for example, if you're starting off with exercises, and guys, if you guys can already do the 1 2 3 4 exercise at 100 beats per minute, then you don't have to keep on doing it. There's going to be other exercises coming up. It's just to develop technique to a certain level. So there's going to be things that you can kind of omit if you feel like you have mastery over a concept, right? We don't have to like beat a dead horse or anything, but if you have your bar chords down and you can find them relatively quickly, then okay, we're going to move on to something else. There's also something to be said for taking a week break from a practice schedule and just focusing your whole time practicing songs and learning songs and repertoire. I think that can be really invigorating for a lot of people. Just making sure that you're learning songs that utilize the things that you've been working on. And the other thing too that you have to understand, John, is that none of us get to everything every single day. I used to beat myself up about that all the time because I would have this huge list of things that I wanted to practice on any given day. And then you get anxious about it, and then you end up not practicing at all, or you practice very little, or it's unorganized. Um, the reason for having so many things to practice in a lot of cases is going back to that shoot for the stars, land on the moon. If I tell myself I want to practice for 6 hours today, but I get in four, that's a win. Because if I would have told myself I want to practice for 4 hours today and I get in two, well, now I've only got in 2 hours of practice. So I always shoot higher. I do that with everything I do. So if I have a set list I'm learning and I want to get through the first 10 songs today, I will budget time for 15. Why? Because I might get 10, right? It's the same strategy that I used in college. If you want to pass a test or something like that. And so you're shooting for a C, you're going to get a D. If you want to get a B, you're going to get a C. If you want to get an A minus, you're going to get a B plus. If you want to get an A, you'll probably get an A minus. But if you shoot for a perfect score, then you might get that A. And that's kind of one of the concepts that I use all the time. And I don't see it as in any way letting myself down or any of those types of things. Because, even Michael Jordan had what, a 50% field goal percentage over the course of his career. So, um, you're not going to hit everything. You got to be kind to yourself. Um, yeah. And so keeping with that stuff, I would just ask a couple questions of you, John. Do you document everything every day? Do you write everything down? I used to leave a blank page in my practicing notebooks as a reminder. And it would be like, okay, so Monday the 10th, Tuesday the 11th, blank page. And, like, because a lot of people, they just like Wednesday the next day, and they start going from there. But no, I'll leave that blank page in. So when I flip through my practicing book, I'm like, ah, yes, I remember that day. Right. And so it kind of helps to have that accountability with yourself if you can. So, um, other things that would probably make you more productive is just making sure you're using a timer and sticking to it. You might be almost there at a breakthrough. Okay, maybe you can push it a little bit further there. But like if I'm practicing my arpeggios for 10 minutes, when that timer goes off, I'm done. It doesn't matter where I'm at, I'm done. And I make sure that those 10 minutes are undisturbed. If I get a text message, I'm not answering it. If my phone rings, I'm not answering it. If there's a knock on the door, I'm not answering it. The only thing that's going to get me to stop in the middle of a 10-minute, break a practice is an emergency, or if my wife needs something, and then I will stop. Although she probably would say that doesn't happen very often. Or the kids knock. Sometimes I'll have one of my kids come in here and give me a pretty picture that they wrote. So that's good, Sue. Bobby, hey Bobby, do you miss Texas? No, I actually do not miss Texas, not one bit. Stillwater has been really good for my family. My kids are thriving here, and it was just getting too expensive in Dallas. Now, even though I'm still playing music full time, most of my income is not from gigs. I still gig every week, but I'm not pushing myself. If I want to do a gig that week, I'll do a gig. If I don't, then I don't. And so I kind of have control over that. The projects that I'm playing with right now, it's just a very comfortable schedule. If we don't want to play, we don't play. It's nice to have the little bit of extra money, but it's not essential. A lot of the reason why I'm still gigging is because it is really good for developing, your playing chops and live performance and all the other stuff as well. So, but yeah, for some reason, don't really miss Texas at all. So, Paul, do you see any benefits to multi-effects pedals like the Fender Tone Master, for instance? I've been really interested in trying one of those. I'm also very interested in the Helix Stadium that's going to come out. And yes, there is an awful lot of benefit to those things, especially in programming different patches. I know, having played in various types of commercial bands through the years, having songs preset so that I can go from a country tune to doing "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey, that I can switch over without clicking a bunch of pedals on the floor. At the same time, I've done gigs with a champ and an overdrive pedal just because I thought it would be cool. But I see a lot of benefits to those things. The only thing I would watch out for if you're a beginner is just option anxiety when it comes to the multi-effects units. You don't want to be spending more time putzing with your gear than you are actually practicing. So that's just something to keep in mind on that. Or, like we were talking at the beginning of the live stream today, when you're budgeting your time, three things you need to work on every day. One, structures, applied stuff for the guitar, like figuring out the guitar neck, scales, chords, triads, arpeggios, all that good stuff. Two, repertoire. Um, you have to play a song every day, guys. Every day you have to play real music. Sometimes people get so focused on the structures that they never spend time playing a song. While it is true that I recommend doing songs at the end of your structured practice, kind of as musical dessert, um, it still needs to get done. And probably the biggest omission from a lot of my students is, I'm like, okay, are you still, putting on a backing track and improvising every day? And a lot of people will be like, nope, not doing it. Because that's where we develop the language. That's where we develop our voice on the guitar. Imagine if you were going to learn another language. You're going to learn French or whatever it is. You can read and write as much French as you can, but if you're not actually in active conversation with French-speaking people, you're not going to develop the language. It's just the way it is. Um, so you have to be speaking that language, and that's what improvisation does. The other benefit of improvisation, no matter how good you are, you don't have to be good at it. You just have to, you could put on a C major backing track, go over to your piano and plunk out all the white notes and try to create a melody. That's still a decent amount of work there. Um, but you have to be doing that every single day so you can develop that part of your musical mind, because that's the whole part of, I'm going to create something in my head and then I'm going to try and play it, rather being a reactionary player, which means that I'm going to play something and I hope this sounds good, right? I'm sure we've all done that. You're like, okay, so this is the scale pattern. I'm just going to randomly put my fingers down and hope it sounds good. Imagine if you got to a place where you knew what the lick you're going to play sounds like before you even play it. The same thing that you do when you're speaking. So take a sip of water here before we move on here. What would be next here? Let's see here. Ooh, is there a good way to practice without an instrument? Yes. Yeah. So in high school, I used to work at Subway. So in fact, I worked at Subway for like, gosh, 3 years, I think, something like that. Um, I was a very dedicated sandwich artist. um, But this was around the time when I was really actively trying to get as good as I possibly could. So I was practicing guitar all the time, listening to music all the time, and the working 4 hour, 6 hour shifts or whatever it was really kind of cramping my schedule as far as getting better at guitar. And so what I would do is I'd be sitting there making sandwiches, but I'd be having the fretboard in my mind, and I'd be kind of playing licks or playing parts of songs and solos in my head while I was working. Um, yeah, you don't need a lot of mental processing power to make a sandwich. So, yeah. So I was able to do that. The other thing I did is, the year before I went off to college, I got a great, job for, somebody at, like, well, how old was I? Like 20 or something like that before I went off to Berkeley. I worked for 9 months to a year as a lab assistant in a hospital lab for this AIRS study, and all I did was spot blood. It was like a hemoglobin study or something like that. So you take a vial of blood, you'd spot it on the strip, you'd put the vial away, you'd grab another vial, you'd spot it on the strip, you'd put that vial away, and you do that 8 hours a day nonstop. And so what I would do is I would bring in my portable CD player. This is back when that existed, and I would maybe bring one or two CDs all day, and I just put them on constant loop. And so I remember when this stuff started to click, I was listening to Ice Pickin' by Albert Collins. And I remember coming home from work, firing up my guitar amp, and I could magically play along with it because I was internalizing those phrases. And so it was really eye-opening for me because I was like, "Okay, I can practice away from the instrument." Listening is a big part of that, right? Visualizing things. I call it stoplight practice. Once we get into major scales, and those of you who are in the music theory courses that I'm teaching will know this. Like the major scales. So one of the uh, assignments that I give is you have to be able to say all 12 major scales cycle 4. So C major, C, D, F, G, A, B, F major, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, B flat major, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, E flat major, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, A flat major, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, then D flat major, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C. F sharp major, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, B sharp. B major, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. Then E major, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp. A major, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp. D major, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. And finally, G major, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. Okay. So, I mean, that is something you can do at a red stoplight, right? Something you can kind of be doing while you're over the course of a day. Or even, like we were talking about the cycle 4 thing, you can just take the first 3 scales and do that. So, um, yeah, so Shamblin says, this week I spent time just diagramming the fretboard blanks. So paper practice. That is fantastic. Keep on doing that. If you can't diagram it, you don't know it. So, um, uh, Michael says, party goers. Oh, yeah, back to the Midland thing. You all played it better. LOL. Yeah, thank you. Letters from the Cat Bus. Do you play any other instruments? If so, how do you juggle that with your guitar practice regimen? I keep up on the piano at a very minimal level, and that's about it. Yeah, I learned very early on that I have to dedicate myself to one thing, so that's kind of what I do. I know some people that can do lots of different instruments. I'm just not that guy. I don't have the bandwidth for that. So, let's see here. Let's see. We got Mark says he's using a fractal. Oh yes. Congratulations, Bartholomew. Thank you. I know who that is. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. $5 a month is basically nothing for what this course provides. I almost feel guilty. No, it's part of the thing. This is a lot of it's a lot of the stuff that is I wish that I would have had when I was starting off with, obviously when we go into the intermediate level, the intermediate course will probably be $10 a month. So that's just a step up on there. But the whole purpose behind the Guitar in a Year course is to say, hey, what are all the skills that any guitarist needs to have to play in their first band, go to a open mic, go to a jam session, write their own music, learn songs by themselves, become self-sufficient, have a pathway moving forward to create a sustainable learning experience the rest of their life. And that's kind of the goal with this. And if I can do that for people to get them started on the right track, then I'm happy to do it. So, for students that have been playing since Moses was a midshipman, how to evaluate what to start them on? Yeah. And so I do a diagnostic with a lot of students in our first lesson. And a lot of times I'll start off from the very beginning. I'll say, how many notes are on your neck? 7? Wait, no, 8, because it's an octave. Well, both are wrong. An octave is a span of 8 notes, but it's actually 7 notes. Okay, so there's actually 12 notes on your guitar. Or sometimes people will be like, I don't know, 200? So, even starting off with that, because we can find deficiencies in people's even perception of what the whole scope is of this thing. Kind of like what I was talking about when I first started, why, it was a little bit of a struggle for me. I had no idea. But if you tell a beginner that there's only 12 notes on their neck, okay, I can do this. It's only 12 notes, right? And so that's something that is really important. So I'll typically go through and ask them to provide certain things. Like if I needed a C major scale at the 5th fret, how would I play it? And I pay attention to not only their technique and articulation and tone, but also I'm watching for any gaps in knowledge. I can typically tell, if there's a hesitation in their playing, what they're thinking about, if it's not immediate, how much practice they spend on that, or even if it's a structure that is part of their playing, or if it's something they know. Because a lot of people know how to play C major scales, but they don't actually use them, in their day-to-day practice. And so you can tell too if it's not a part of their musician self, right? It's just something that they know. Yeah. So Okay, let's see here. Do you think Rocksmith app game is something one can use to play songs or to just play and have fun? I don't see a problem with it, Raven. Um, really anything. The only thing that is obviously not going to make you better is going to be like Guitar Hero. There's a time I taught in this studio where there was like like 5 or 6 different teachers, and we all had our own room. And when Guitar Hero came out, it was kind of entertaining because you got people that were really good at that game, and then they would go to learn guitar, and they're immediately so mad. They're like, "I could play Through the Fire and Flames on Guitar Hero, but I can't even strum a G chord." And they'd get so frustrated. It's like, yeah, it's a different skill. But no, there's nothing wrong with those types of things. And remember, we all have different learning styles. Like I'm not saying that the way that I teach or look at the instrument is something that works for everybody, and I don't intend it to be. Some people are going to find just a lot of really good experiences with stuff like that. So, whatever works for you, but you have to be realistic again about goals and be really honest with yourself about what we're doing. So, um, okay, let's see here. Um, yeah, Mark says, me and my bass player call it practicing in your mind. I spent many a lunch hour in my car listening to songs and writing chord progressions for practice that night. Yes, that's great. Um, let's see here. All right. Well, guys, I guess we've been in here for about an hour and 11 minutes. So I guess not too shabby for first live stream. I've never done this before, so hopefully it wasn't too painful for you guys. I really appreciate everyone and all the support that you have given me over this past year. I have a lot of exciting things coming up. I'm going to get to work with some pretty cool people, have a lot of good things in the works for stuff on YouTube over the course of the next year, too. One thing I am going to try to work on more is Instagram and TikTok. So I don't know if I have to reach out to a fancy, young person or something like that to have them teach the old guy how to work that stuff. But that is what is next on the list. So, yeah, feel free to reach out, guys, if you have any questions or if you have suggestions for videos too. I love suggestions for videos because I have a notebook full of all sorts of stuff that I want to do videos on. But sometimes you guys know what's best, what you have questions about. So, all right, everyone. Well, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you soon. Okay. All right. Peace, everyone. Take care.